Hey, thanks for joining us here at BecomeNew.me, where you'll find daily video devotionals from John Ortberg, where we're going on a journey to learn more about who we are becoming as we draw closer to God. If this video resonates with you, share with a friend. Otherwise, here's John.
Hey, this is John Ortberg, and today is really, really meaningful. I'm so glad you tuned in. We're on this journey, radical acceptance, through the Advent season, talking about how to have a posture of yes towards God, towards life. And I'm here with Charles Albert Bergstrom, Dr. Charles Albert Bergstrom. I grew up and I didn't really have a friend, and I didn't know it till I was a sophomore in high school. And in the space of about a week, I went to your house and your mom fixed this bean and ballpark soup. And by the end of that week, I had a friend. And so I'm super grateful for Chuck. We want to spend a few minutes talking about radically accepting the moments of clarity that God brings into your life. And I was thinking, Chuck, of the story, the beginning of the Advent story, when an angel comes to Zechariah and says, you're going to be the father eventually of John the Baptist. And Zechariah says, how can I be sure about this? And the angel's response, well, okay, you're going to be silent till it happens because you did not believe my words. And if you're somebody who doubts, who struggles with faith, Chuck is your guy, because that's kind of your faith story.
That's my faith story indeed.
Yeah.
I'm actually honored you let me be on camera today, because usually I'd sit in the background and make rude comments. So I think he felt like it was actually safer to have me on camera today. So.
Making rude comments on camera.
That's right.
Which
That's
it will be very hard for you not to do.
I've got a joke. No.
Yeah, all these punchlines come flooding to mind, but I can't say them because someone might know the joke. So there is a moment of clarity in your life. We were talking about it yesterday, but we got to kind of build up to it. So talk about what led to that moment for you.
Yeah, so I was 34 years old, and I was diagnosed with testicular cancer, which, you never want a diagnosis of cancer, but fortunately when I was diagnosed, it was a period of time when they had just really radicalized treatment for it, and it had gone from being kind of incurable to being a totally curable cancer, where the oncologists actually go, don't worry about this one, not a problem, we can treat you, we can cure you, and you should do fine. The treatment is 97% effective, and 3% we don't succeed, but 97% of the time you do great. And so I went through the initial surgery and then went through the chemotherapy, and they were monitoring blood marker levels of tumor, and the markers went down and everything was great. And the treatment was one of those things where, interestingly, where you're going through it, you if you've been through cancer, you may have been like this. I was, where I didn't care if I lived or died, because the chemo was so rough. It was just like, if I die, this is great.
I was living in Chino Hills, California, and Chuck was in Atlanta then, and we would talk every week. On Saturday I'd call, and I remember when you hit that point of just, this is so awful, I don't care. And tell them what you did to prep for.
Yeah, my hair started falling out after the initial weeks of chemo, and it would just come out in clumps, and it was sort of fun. You could amuse your friends with it, but at some point it became kind of gross, and so I shaved my head and called myself Chemo Man, and paraded around.
Vintage
like
Chuck.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So.
Yep.
Anyway.
So you had to go through that at one point, just kind of ready to die, didn't know if you'd live or die. But then at the end of the treatment, everything looked great.
It did. It looked great. And then they continued to monitor me for, following months and for, a number of years afterwards. And I was about 2 months post-chemotherapy when I went back in for my tumor markers, and the oncologist called me up the next day, and it's never a good thing when your oncologist calls you up. Says, hey, Chuck, I want to talk to you. And I'm like, I don't like this. And he said, your tumor markers are elevated, and we need you to come back in. They've gone up. And normally they did the tumor markers once a week, and he said, come back in next Wednesday and we'll run them on Thursday again. And at the time I was like, I'm not waiting a week for this. So, just because doctors get all this privilege, you know, it's like, it's unfair, but it is what it is. And so I said, you got to run this now. So I went down there to the office, and the tech who was drawing my blood made the mistake of letting me look at the lab work, and I looked at the numbers, and it was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. Oh, that was really, yeah, sorry, I'm getting choked up. It's just, I always have a hard time telling the story. But it's like, I'm going to die, and I got little kids.
Yeah.
And
because to have gone through the treatment and then have the numbers
Yeah,
come back up
yeah.
that high that fast
Yeah.
means that it's not going to be
right.
Yeah.
I was at 3%. And so I said, do I really have to wait a week for this? And he goes, no, we'll run it again. And so he drew the numbers and set up the lab test, which set the lab up to do it again. And I went to work on Friday after they drawn it on Thursday. And my wife was at a church meeting. And so he calls me up and he says, it's a lab error. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to live. And he said, you know, heads are going to roll at the lab. And I go, forget that. I'm going to go down and kiss him on the lips. That's like the greatest day of my life. He's like, I'm so embarrassed. So I'm like, hey, doc, don't worry about this. This is the best thing that's ever happened to me. It's like, this is fantastic. So
they had just mistaken somebody else's results
Yeah.
for yours.
Yeah, somebody-
and that person hadn't even been through
right,
treatment
it was
yet.
somebody who hadn't been through the treatment yet, and their tumor markers were still real high. And so I presume that gentleman turned out okay afterwards too, because again, it remains very treatable for 97%. So, but yeah, for that day, it was like I felt like Lazarus coming out of the grave. It was just powerful.
Yeah, so that's what we were just talking about this week as we're together, and that's been 30 years
Yeah,
ago, and I can
right,
remember so
right.
vividly the day that you called when the results were back, going to bed that night and thinking, on the one hand, Chuck saying he's going to die, but then like I couldn't pray, and
Yeah.
I just had this thought, there has to be some mistake, and then I thought, oh, that's what denial looks
Right,
like.
right.
But we were talking this week about the idea of a moment of clarity and how life looked to you when you got that news. So talk about what was clear to
Yeah,
you then.
so, you know, I've told John, he knows me so well, and I live with doubts all the time. And I'm the kind of person where when I die, if, you know, I end up in heaven, I'll get there and be like, wow, it really was all true. That stuff that my mom and dad taught me that I believed, it's like, it really was true. I just, wow, this is fantastic. I just didn't know. I mean, I hope, but I didn't know. But so I've lived with doubt all my life, and it's just who I am, and it's okay, painful at times, and sometimes it's great. But when the doctor called me up and said it was a lab error, I had one of those moments when I knew with certainty certain things about life.
Yeah.
And it was like, I don't know why, but at that moment I knew that God was there, not because my life was saved. It was just like, that wasn't it. I just knew that life was precious, that it came from somewhere, and I knew God was there. And I also had that flash of clarity where I knew that I had a wife I could hug, and kids I could hug, and friends who loved me, and I knew that these were all very good things and so much more important than anything else that I would ever worry about in my life, a 401k or where I was living or what kind of car I drove. It was just like, I know what's important, and this is what's important. Hug my wife, hug my kids, live life, tell my friends I love them, and God, you are there. And I knew it with clarity. And yeah, it's something I wish I could bottle and just take a whiff of every now and then, because oh gosh, at the time it was like, I'm so free. I know this is true.
And what you were saying yesterday that was so striking to me was, it's like we don't always get that in life, and maybe to some people you just have a kind of faith that's always with you, but I think a lot of us struggle with doubts. But what you were saying yesterday is, it's like when those moments of clarity come to you, you have to seize them and steward them. And when life returns to normal, whatever that is, or it's not as clear to you anymore, you cannot reject them. You have to remember, oh yes, it was clear to me, and I will hold on to that in times of doubt or stagnation or difficulties. I will remember life does matter. God is there. And we're all, wherever you are, whatever you're going through, it could be in a birth or the loss of somebody precious or an answer to prayer or a gift. When that moment of clarity comes that life matters
Yeah.
and God loves you,
Yeah.
You got to hold. You have to be faithful to that in times when you're
Yeah.
not as clear.
Right. Because it's so easy to just discard those things and go, oh, I remember once. And it's like, no, there have been moments that were precious. The first time you ever kissed your spouse, when a child was born, when you find out that, oh, you're not going to die, you're going to live, and you go, oh, I see, the veil has parted, and I see what really matters in life. And I just know that I know this. It wasn't doubt at all. It was certainty.
Yeah.
And then I can walk away and forget that later. But it's like, no, I have to steward that. I have to go back and remember that and just go, I saw this. I know it. It was true.
So today, the angel that came to Zechariah, the news that came to Chuck, comes to you, comes to me. You're alive today. You have this gift. So if you have someone in your life that you love, go hug them and tell them you love them and thank God and embrace life and embrace this day. Radically accept it. Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Love you.
Love you too, man. Good to be here. Thank you.
Hi, more than a video to watch, we hope this is a community you can engage with. So add your voice to the comments. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Instagram, or join our Facebook group, becomenew.me. We'll be posting daily resources and questions for you to engage with. So take a step, get connected. We'll see you next time.